Hi everyone, it's Catherine and I am here with Claire.
Hello.
And I'm also here with some gin because I'm off tomorrow. So, have to get through all the deceit and murder.
I've got a little bit of white wine left over from dinner.
Nice, nice. So we are going all the way from Cat 5 to Tyrion 10, which according to the wiki is chapter 13 to chapter 44 in A Clash of Kings tonight. And next week we're reading all the way from Cat 6 to Theon 9. So starting with Cat twice in a row. We're really going through the Tyrion chapters, already up to 10. I think Tyrion has the most chapters in blah 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 Clash, but we're only on Dany 3 and Davos 2, and yet like Davos chapters just seem so dramatic in this book, so it's interesting the way they've kind of evened out. So yeah, we have Cat 5, and Cat has arrived back and at Riverrun, and a few things have changed. And she realizes that Robb didn't want her around, so he wouldn't tell her about his plan with the Lannisters at
Oxcross. You're thinking of
I keep going to say Oxbridge, and I'm like, no, that's not right.
No.
unless Effie was out, rowing. All right. So yeah, so she turns up. Hoster is very, very sick at this stage. But there's a few red flags when she turns up. Edmure is a bit cocksure of himself in every which way, including frequenting brothels. And Roose Bolton has married Walder's daughter, which is a massive red flag, I feel.
Yeah.
And I just wonder how much do they know about what's happened with Lady Hornwood. So yeah, there's that, and there's a couple of things that I was mainly interested in here. Hoster mistaking Cat for Lysa and telling her that she has a duty to do. She has to marry Jon Arryn, even though he's older, and she has to leave the wretched boy and the stripling behind, which we can assume is Littlefinger.
Yeah.
And she talks about the Silent Sisters bringing in Ned's bones and envies them and their position. And yeah, and the other thing that that really stuck out to me is that she wishes she could go and choke Cersei to death.
Yes, in fact, Cersei's white throat is mentioned a couple of times in these in this chunk, this kind of group of chapters, and this is the first time. So we have Cat thinking about strangling her, and it's especially when she describes it as her white throat, and it's just like, I know this is really like out there, and plenty of people have probably said something like this similar before, but whether or not the end game will involve Lady Stoneheart killing Cersei, who's like become another,
right,
or or a White Walker. It's like, I mean, the thing is, I don't think it will be Cat who's the Valonqar, but it's just interesting that Cersei's throat is, I mean, that's absolutely, I've got no doubt that that's how Cersei is going to die. It's just who does it, and there seems to be quite a few suspects even at this stage,
even though we don't have that prophecy yet. So he's building up nicely to that prophecy when we get it from Cersei. It's interesting. I didn't watch it because I'm afraid of spoilers, but Smokescreen, one of my favorite Game of Thrones channels, amazing channel, he put up a video about will Cersei die twice? That was just the title of it. And I didn't look at it because I wasn't sure about leaks. I'm trying to stay away, so I don't know. I don't think it is a leak. He's very careful. He's usually quite careful. But yeah, just interesting that it just coincided with these couple of chapters. So, and when
it's funny because I thought to myself, oh well, it can't be Cat strangling Cersei, unless she strangles her as Cersei is like undead, and she's already been strangled, and that means she's like, oh god, that's like she'd be strangled twice.
That would be brilliant, because that's the one thing that I would like to see, a white on white death. That would be cool.
Yeah.
So yeah. So what did you get from this chapter then?
And not a great deal, really. I think it's interesting that Robb definitely seems to be clearly striking out on his own. He doesn't seem to need Kat's advice anymore. So this notion of him being the wolf in the night, you know, it's very, very stark. It seems to be much more, you know, he's led by his dire wolf and into battle. So I get the impression that Robb is more of a Stark than a Tully at this point, and he's definitely seems to be quite confident of going off and doing his own things without having to ask his mum, which wasn't really the case when Cat first turned up in his camp. But then later on in the chapter, I've made a note that Cat starts to tell Edmure what his battle plans should be. Is this because Robb's not there to push him around? And it's like, you know, she can't help herself. She can't help herself. She has to tell somebody what she thinks they should be doing, whether it's a son or a brother or whatever. And it's like, let them just get on with it, Cat. You know,
yeah.
They seem to be doing absolutely fine on their own without you meddling and being involved. But yeah, this is the chapter where Brienne gives her oath to Cat as well. I think, is it? Yes, it is, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah, and she bends the knee, and Cat says that she swears not to ask Brienne to do anything that will bring her into disrepute. And it's like, I wonder if that's the same for Lady Stoneheart, if she will ask Brienne to do anything that brings her into disrepute. Because she's made a vow there. She's sworn to Brienne that she wouldn't do that. So let's see how that pans out. There's also news at Riverrun, when Cat arrives at Riverrun, of a letter arriving from Storm's End from Penrose, saying that there is a siege at Storm's End and that they will pledge to any king. They will. The way they're feeling at the moment at Storm's End is, we will pledge to any king who will break this siege. And that, for me, was the beginning of lots and lots of comparisons between this siege at Storm's End and the previous siege at Storm's End with Stannis, and where Davos turns up as the Onion Knight. I mean, we'll go into that a little bit later, but I just thought it was interesting that Penrose has said, I don't care who we bend the knee to, just somebody who will break this siege, because clearly they didn't want to be in that position again where they were being starved out at Storm's End. And in fact, that isn't what happened this time around. But yeah, I think it's funny when Cat and Edmure are going backwards and forwards about battle plans and what to do. Neither of them seem to realise how crucial Bolton is and what a crushing blow that would be if he turned his cloak. They seem to be putting a lot of trust, and they're not even thinking about it. They're not even thinking about the position that Bolton seems to be manoeuvring himself into. They seem to be more worried about confronting the Freys, and they just they fail to see how much power Roose has and how much he's moving himself into a very fortuitous position where he could very easily turn his cloak. And it's like they should be suspicious of that, and they're too worried about the Freys and about appeasing the Freys and battle tactics and whether or not what Robb's up to. And it's like, yeah, nobody at all seems to be paying attention to what Roose is doing at this point. And the finger of suspicion, just because of the history of House Bolton, should be like, Cat should be saying, whatever's going on, keep a close eye on Ramsay Bolton, because I don't trust him at all.
And it's like there's no way Roose should even be in a position where he marries one of Walder's kids before Robb and Cat uphold their end of the vow to marry one of his kids. So already Roose looks better than Robb because he didn't have to, like, you know, as far as Cat knows, you know, there's nothing there for them. There's no promise there bigger than what Cat and Robb have made. So they should have already, Robb should already be married.
Yeah.
As a token of good faith and just to secure that alliance. That's a big problem, I think, as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did like.
Sorry, I was just. Oh no, I was just going to say the conversation with Hoster at the end of this chapter. So where he's pleading, "Have you forgiven me?" So what we need to ask ourselves here is, what does Hoster need forgiveness for? What's he implying when he talks about your duty? Because that sounds like he's given somebody a job to do. And again, going back to the Tully House words, honour, family duty. So what was that job he gave somebody to do? And yeah, those are the two main questions, really. The bit at the end with the Silent Sisters where Ned's bones arrive, and I've just got my question is, how do we know that this is Ned? Well, we don't.
Yeah, we don't know. No.
So the bones are supposed to be, she sends off the Silent Sisters to Winterfell to take Bones Neds to the crypt. And that's the last we hear, I think, in the entire story. We never hear whether they made it to Winterfell. What, you know, we don't hear anything about them. So we don't know what happened to his bones.
And is there magic in those bones? Like, is there something powerful in those bones?
Maybe.
Like, if there's power in a king's blood, why not power in, like, the bones of a first man?
Yeah.
So, yeah. The Hoster conversation with Cat, or at least he thinks it's about Cat. It seems to me that the two big things are, he talks about Brandon and arranging the marriage of Brandon, and then whoever this, well, Littlefinger and Lysa, and Jon Arryn, and that there's a duty there, and
it was the best thing to do, as if there was no other choice.
It still makes me wonder. So, you know, the idea is that the Blackfish is gay.
Yeah.
I wonder about Jon Arryn as well, because Blackfish went to go serve. And I just wonder about the marriage there between Lysa and Jon Arryn, and was it kind of a marriage of convenience in the same way that we have the Renly and Marjorie kind of marriage?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just I absolutely no evidence for it, but it's just something, because it seems to me that the three people Hoster was most concerned with in his family were Cat, Lysa, and Brendan. Edmure doesn't seem to get a look in at all.
Yeah.
Which there's a lot of questions there as well. And why?
Because he is the heir. So
he really is.
Yeah.
I'd like to see more of him. I really would like to hear a bit more from him. Since now he's the only living Tully, old Tully left, you know. But yeah, that's all I have for Cat. I liked the Brienne scene. I did like that scene. But yeah, that's about it. That's all I had.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
So then we move on to Dany 3, and there's a big thing in Dany 3, which I'm sure we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about. But we quickly get the impression that Xaro is not going to give her any ships. He doesn't have them to give her. He gives her an amethyst, which I missed before. He gives her an amethyst that will protect her against poison. Does she still have that?
Well, I think she throws it away, doesn't she? Or she just kind of casts it to one side. It's one of, it's
not
just
hanging around anymore anyway.
I don't think it is hanging around anymore. No, it's a kind of trinket token thing that he gave her.
It made me think of Mel with her ruby.
Of course. Yeah.
So I was just wondering about that.
Which again is referenced later on when Mel talks about to Davos. She says it was, she had extra protection. So yeah. So what we're talking about here is the silver collar that Zaro Zohan Doxas gives to Dany is said to be an enchanted amethyst. So yeah, clearly similarities there to Mel's enchanted ruby and warding off spells and things like that. So what magic is that from? What kind of, is there is there any difference between an enchanted ruby and an enchanted amethyst? Do they do the same thing? It's so that's I've totally forgotten about that. I also totally forgotten about the sorrowful men. These are mentioned as in Karth, because clearly Dany's still hanging around in Karth. That this is an ancient sacred order of assassins, the Sorrowful Men, and they sound pretty much exactly like the Faceless Men, apart from they have this tradition of saying "I'm so sorry" after
they. So funny, but you laugh when you hear it.
But it's very polite. But again, it's kind of very Carthine as well, like the whole emphasizing something with crying, but there's just nothing emotional about. It's like it's just this fake. When Doc Sass is talking to her in the litter as they're arriving at his mansion, and he's sort of, this single tear trickles down his face to sort of, I'm so I love you so much, or and it's like she can tell she's quite clever. She's figured out that he's gay. Clearly, she's figured out that there's no love there for her. It's all completely fake. I mean, at the end of the day, what's happening here is Zaro is pimping out Dany to tourists that come into Karth as some sort of sideshow act, because she's got these 3 dragons, and he's charging people to kind of view this circus act. And then he's ploughing that money back into like ingratiating himself into her favor. And she's figured that all out. So, yeah.
Yeah, with that in mind, Sonny actually sent me a question in advance asking about the importance of the fire mage, which again, I've forgotten about. And what do they call it? The fire mage and the cut purse.
Yes.
So Sonny wants to know about the fire mage in particular. And hi Sonny in the chat there. What's the importance of the fire mage? And I wondered, so the fire mage does this kind of conjuring trick with flames, and we learn obviously that magic is now stronger. That the magic is stronger within Dany's presence. Which is it Dany or is it the dragons? Probably the dragons, right? So what's the importance of that? But the idea being that there's this trick going on while the cup purse then goes around and basically seals, right? So I wondered, was it maybe is it a metaphor perhaps, or for Dany and the dragons, that they're going to be this like trick, fires, flames, everybody's going to be watching it go on, and then in the end some cup purse is going to come and take the throne for themselves.
Yeah, maybe.
It's not going to be Dany, but I don't. Other than that, I don't know if there's a magical importance there. Did you see any other importance?
Oh, there's I mean, similar in a similar vein. The fire magic is, there's something else behind it that's more sinister. It's not what it seems to be. So
yes,
and we hear again a lot of these chapters. This group of chapters seem to be tied together quite neatly in lots of different themes. A couple of things and they seem quite random, but they do pop up in different chapters.
Yeah, there's like lots of politics, but
yeah,
there's
yeah.
definitely more magic coming through.
Yes, yeah. Where Davos kind of alludes to the other and the darkness, and Mel gets really quite angry about it and like never speak about him, never mention his name, that kind of. So maybe maybe that's because the great other is the one with the power, not God, what's the name of the R'hllor, not R'hllor,
Yeah.
but that, you know, the great other. Maybe that's kind of like, you know, it's like a bait and switch sort of, you know, we're not quite sure what we're seeing here, and other things are going in. Before you know it, you've walked off, and it's like, oh, right, okay, I now realise what's happened. So I do think it's a metaphor, definitely, and it's an obvious reminder to us that, and Quaithe says it herself, that the dragons are kind of amping up the magic, and that's why the fire mage can now do things like conjure up ladders rather than just small little, you know, sort of little tricks that he was doing previously.
And even in that cat chapter, the foundation for what could potentially be one of the most important relationships in the entire series, Brienne and Cat, it comes from them witnessing an act of evil that has come through magic. So it does, you know, with the exception maybe of Tyrion 9, there is definitely like this kind of red flag thing. Watch out for magic, you know, watch out for magic. This isn't necessarily a good thing.
Yeah.
The other thing in this, then, one of my favorite lines from the series is in this chapter, with Jorah saying to Dany that nothing unites a broken country more than an invading army, an invading foreign force. And it's so important because that's exactly what we're all rooting for when the whites come. You know, we're all hoping they get their act together.
Yes.
We're not thinking about Dany, we're thinking about the whites. And it's just such a great line. And I wish I wish his dad was a bit more forceful with that kind of line.
Yeah. But again, I think it also, it's one of those things that you can interpret as, like, we've mentioned this before about how the small folk must feel, and even the lords, how they must feel about Stannis and this new religion. And it must feel like an invading force.
Yeah.
Which is like, okay, yeah, no wonder everyone flocked to Renly. It just felt nicer and more familiar and more accommodating. And also it was the same gods that we've all grown up with and that we're all familiar with, and we don't know what this weird foreign religion is, but it just doesn't seem to sit right. It seems really aggressive. It's all related to fire, and we don't, you know, that's you know, we need to be driving that out.
So the big thing in this chapter is what Quaithe says to Dany. It's something that comes up again and again and again in the fandom. So I'm just going to quickly read. It's only 5 lines. And I think what happens before what she says is important as well. So I'm going to read that too. It says, Dany's wrist still tingled where Quaithe had touched her. Where would you have me go, she asked. To go north, you must journey south. To reach the west, you must go east. To go forward, you must go back. To touch the light, you must pass beneath the shadow. And Dany thinks that that's a shy straight away. She thinks that that means a shy. But we know that's not a shy, right? That's not what she's talking about.
I don't think it is. I don't think it's a shy at all. I mean, I've just put Shadow Tower ? So, you know, there are other references to shadows. The thing is here is this is a perfect example of us as readers, and in this case, Dany experiencing, oh, shadow, right, you mean a shy, you want me to go to a shy, what will I find there? That's not the right question to ask, because what Quaithe says is, well, what you'll find in a shy is the truth. But that's not an answer to, is that where I need to go? So, yeah, she may find a shy. She may find the truth in a shy, and that could just be a general, you know, this is my home this is what you will find in my you know, in the Shadowlands, and but that's nothing to do with where you need to go. You need to pass under the shadow. And the only other thing that I can think of is the Shadow Tower, and it's also that reference to touch the light as well, which links right back to one of the chapters, one of the very first chapters in Game of Thrones with Bran, where he flies in his dream and he travels right like beyond the wall, and he sees this light. So I'm presuming that that's the light that Quaithe is referring to, and the only thing that I can think of that's a shadow in proximity to beyond the wall is the Shadow Tower at the wall.
The only other shadow, like if you think of an actual shadow, and the only other thing that she could pass under being a shadow is maybe the shadow of a dragon, or some other magical being of some sort, but unless it's an ice dragon of some sort, or
but it's that, I mean, if it's kind of like instructions of like, where do I need to go, and
maybe yeah, that makes sense.
It's kind of more like a, to me, shadow is like more of a geographical place that you need to go to, and it's, but again, all the kind of metaphors and the language is you know, it's all riddles at this point, and everything's mixed
up. Annoying.
Yeah, it's annoying, but it's just interesting that we're doing, again, because it's the only thing that we can do at this stage, we're latching on to what we're being told, and it's through other people's point of views and other people's perceptions and other people's experiences, and also we do exactly the same. It's that human condition of, oh, the shadow, so I have to go to a shy. Well, that's not what I said, but yes, you will find the truth in a shy. But you know, it's not, it's that it's very easy to get things confused and mixed up, especially when it comes to these riddly prophecies, and you know, Quaithe is classic for them.
Yeah, just tell her.
Yeah,
just tell her what she needs.
Yeah.
Give her an address. Okay, you don't have to have Google Maps. Just, you know, the postcode.
So to me, it sounds like what's happening here is that when she arrives in Westeros, she must arrive south before she goes north. So she's not going to arrive at the wall or in the Lands of Always Winter. She's going to arrive somewhere down south, but she will have to travel north. And it just so happens that the Shadow Tower and this thing beyond the wall, which is the light, is up in the north as well. And then the other bit, which is to reach the west, you must go east. To go forward, you must go back. Well, that's the entirety of Dany's story arc in the series. And it's quite funny because at the beginning of this chapter, we get the real sense of urgency with Dany, that she's feeling very impatient. She doesn't want to hang around in Karth. She just sees it as it's. Karth is, on this reread, I've realised, it's just seeing it again as well through Dany's eyes and trying to get into Dany's head a bit more. It's just ludicrously pompous and pretentious, and but she's going with it. You know, she's falling into the tradition. You know, she knows that she has to do these things to move forward. But there are certain limitations for her. Like, no, I'm not going to weep. I'm not just going to weep for the sake of it. You know, I am actually blood of the dragon. There's only so much I will do. Yes, I'll wear these ridiculous outfits where I have to like bare a breast and things like that, but I'm not going to cry in front of these these like pure born pompous ancient kings and queens, especially when I'm obviously some sort of sideshow act. So you know, and they're not going to help me.
It is very much like District 1 in the Hunger Games, if you've read the books. You know, it's just like it's really ridiculous. So what is the truth? Like that's the next thing. Like, is it something to do with Targaryen blood, the connection with the Whites? Is it the truth about who she is? Does it have anything to do with what Miri Mazdur told her? about when she'd see Drogo next. There's like there's so many. It's just another riddle that I feel like she just doesn't like. She seems to get more riddles than anyone else, Dany.
But I'm just thinking now, I can see why people think that somehow there's some sort of like corridor or secret door or something between what's at the very top of the, I mean, because the map just runs, it just says lands of always winter, and then that's like it, the map runs out. But if there's some sort of light at the end of the world, and then you to touch, you touch the light, and you somehow have some sort of, I don't know, the other end of that, the other side of that, the truth, could that be like a shy is on the other side of that? It's like, is there a link between geographically where these things are? So who knows?
Yeah, and the other thing that I found interesting is the fact that she can feel where Quaithe has touched her.
Yeah.
And she can feel the tingle. And I feel like people are very hands-on with Dany, even though they call her queen. Even her, like, Dothraki, people shouldn't be able to touch the queen so freely, I feel. And I know your hands can tingle where somebody has touched you, but I just wonder, did Quaithe create some psychic connection or some enchantment there that she'll later on use to be able to contact Dany through her dreams?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's probably nothing, but it's just...
Well, the only thing that the only thing it reminds me of is a TV show reference, which is where the Night King touches Bran. And then that means that, it's kind of broken some magical thing, that he can now enter into the domain where Bran is. And maybe that's the same maybe it's the same form of magic, or a similar sort of trick, or magic spell or something.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's I feel like Dany, there's nothing much happening with Dany until we get to the end of her story in this book. It's a very slow Dany, but I suppose that it kind of has to be, because it's boring watching dragons grow and eating dead snake.
Yeah. Well, there's just a couple of questions that I've got from this chapter that, again, are just obvious kind of bookmark questions, really. Going back to her in terms of Dany and Viserys' history, and she mentions Illyrio, and like she's trying to figure out who her allies are, I guess. Especially because she's been quite roundly dismissed by these pompous, Karth merchants and ancient, they're just pouncing around everywhere. So maybe she's thinking about this, and I suppose the question is, why did Illyrio house Dany and Viserys for 6 months? That's not just to come and like break bread and I'll you can stay over for the weekend. It's like he actually he provided them with a home for 6 months. So there's all the those questions about who is Illyrio, why did he do that, what was in it for him, what's his motivations. Clearly Dany thinks about, well, he wouldn't, she knows that he's a merchant and he's motivated by money, and absolutely he wouldn't have given her those dragon eggs if he ever thought they would have hatched. And when Jorah says he would have sat on them himself till they hatched. But yeah, but the other thing about Jorah as well is he tells her to keep moving like Quaithe does, keep moving, don't linger in Karth, get out of here, it's not, this isn't helping. But he tells her to keep moving east for safety. And it's just like, really, Jorah, why are you doing that? Why are you encouraging her to move further east?
Well, because the truth of him is west.
Well, yes, yeah.
The truth of what he is west.
Yeah, that's not been exposed yet.
Sonny actually had another question. Was Robert chasing Dany since birth? Like, did he keep up the chase? It doesn't seem like he did.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, no. And I suppose, like, why?
And I don't know. I don't know how serious that would have been. I don't know how intent Robert actually was on murdering them, versus how terrified they must have been as children of thinking that the usurper was going to murder them in their sleep. You know, and also Viserys would have been feeding all this fear to her all the time about how they keep going. And I mean, it's interesting that she just finally seems to feel a bit of an affinity with Viserys when she's thinking about I will not be the beggar queen, and how horrifically humiliating it must have been for Viserys to be referred to as the beggar king.
Sonny says that Dany thinks that Robert has been chasing them to kill them. Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, he certainly wants to kill them later. It's possible he would have married them off to the brother. Well, married Renly and Viserys and Dany and Stannis or something. I don't think so, but yeah, it's possible that he wouldn't have killed them. But I don't know what you would do. What do you do with Targaryens when clearly the people still like the Targaryens over the Baratheons? So yeah, that's about.
So we just end this chapter with we know that there's this impending visit to the Warlocks, and we just leave it at that. So clearly, the next chapter for Dany is going to be the House of the Undying.
Yeah.
So that chapter will be quite interesting. So Tyrion
9, yeah. So Tyrion 9. I have to say this is one of my favorite scenes in the show. I really liked how they did this in the show. This is Marcella leaving with Oakheart to go to Dorne, and the main thing in this chapter, we will get a lot of questions about later on in Feast through Jamie. Jamie will start thinking a lot about what happens here, and really the implications of what happened here are huge. They don't seem that much at the time. They're massive for the politics, for the social order, and for Tyrion's own safety, actually, as well, for the safety of the Lannisters and for the religion in King's Landing. So there's an attack by basically, I wrote down an attack of the sheep. Basically, there's a bread riot, and Joffrey and Cersei and all of them are attacked in the streets by the people, and they manage to get Joffrey and Cersei and others to safety. But Sansa and Lolly, is it?
Lollis,
Lollis, they're left outside, and with a few others. Tyrek, how do you say his name? Tyrek. Yeah, Tyrek. He goes missing here. He's a Lannister that goes missing, and he is the big red flag that later on will lead Jamie to ask if this was all set up by Varys. And actually, there's evidence in next chapters to suggest that it might have been. Because the next time we see Varys, and he's notably absent to say goodbye to Marcella and all that kind of thing. But the next time we see Varys, he's stinking and he's dressed as a beggar. So we know that he's been hanging out in the streets for a while. So there is evidence that he is the one who perhaps sparked or set a spark to this riot. But it probably didn't take much, to be fair. The people.
No, there was just like desperate. It was. You just needed to light a match, and they were ready to go.
Yeah.
We've had the sense of this like building and building and building. So the High Septon gets ripped to shreds here.
Yeah.
I just want to point out the rainbow crystal, the crystal crown that it was in the chapter, it's described as the rainbow reflected across Marcella's face, and obviously we know that's almost like, you know, the slash of Oakheart's. No, who was it? Darkstar, wasn't it? Much later on in the story.
Yes.
Cersei's white throat is referenced again by Tyrion when he talks about her emerald, you know, the emerald jewelry on a rope around her white neck. We begin to see Lancel's quite busy backwards and forwards between Cersei and Tyrion. So Tyrion knows via Lancel about Cersei fraternizing with these kettle blacks. So this is the first time that they're mentioned. And of course, we know much later on in the series that she thinks she's being clever, but the kettle blacks aren't there for no reason. You know, they've been planted there. Which again makes you think who else has been planted conveniently in this story, i.e. Bronn and Shay and people like this. We've had no word from Littlefinger yet. So again, Littlefinger's been quite busy. Tyrion, I think the reason that we get a lot of Tyrion chapters in this book, and at this part of the book in particular, is because we're seeing the war in King's Landing through Tyrion's eyes mainly.
Yeah. And it's the most vulnerable point in Westeros right now.
Yes. So a lot of how Cersei's feeling, how the small folk are feeling, what's happening with Joffrey, and you know, it's Sansa and Tyrion are the two, but Tyrion in particular with the political stuff and the war. I mean, for Sansa, it's just something that's kind of going on around her, whereas Tyrion's right in the middle of it all. Yeah, so we get that, you know, Joffrey gets a load of shit thrown at him.
Which is
great. For the first time, this must have rattled Cersei, but the woman in the crowd with the dead baby screaming brother fucker and Kingslayer's whore. It's that feeling of this could tip over at any time, and we mustn't forget about the small folk and about the crowds and just about the
open
general
the gates to anyone.
Yeah. But just that kind of like, you know, the few versus the many, and who's in power, and power's where you perceive it to be, and you know, it wouldn't take much. It really wouldn't take much, and Joffrey is pushing it and pushing it and pushing it. And just chopping that guy's hat, you know, and the Kingsguard as well are just brutal. There's that scene where the Hound rides back in with Sansa, and obviously we get a little bit more about this later on in Sansa's chapter. Bronn's getting a little bit cocky.
Yeah.
You know, he's like helping himself to Tyrion's food and demanding that a fire be lit, and I can't remember who it is now, but somebody tells Tyrion about what the small folk think of him, which is they think you're evil and that you are. It's not. This must be hot. I mean, can you imagine watching Joffrey and all the horrible, shitty things that Joffrey's doing, and even the small folk are looking at Joffrey and saying, but it's not really his fault. It's this evil, twisted monkey uncle that's the Hand who's giving him evil counsel. So, and it's like, don't, you know, it's annoying because it's kind of like, don't forgive Joffrey for being this like absolute cretin and immediately blaming Tyrion just because he's a dwarf, you know. But obviously that's what's happening. The small folk think that it's all Tyrion's fault. And at the end of next chapter, we see him sort of going, well, two fingers up to you. You know, I'm the only thing that stands between you know, war and chaos. So, yeah. But it's a short chapter, but quite eventful. So, and just illustrates really how quickly things can turn.
Yeah. And I think it is very fitting later on that it's Jaime, because a lot of what's motivating Tyrion is him trying to keep Jaime alive. Even in this chapter, it's like, he doesn't really care about Sansa. He just, if Sansa dies, Jaime's dead. And it's just, it's interesting then that later on it's Jaime that really looks at this and goes, there's something not right. What happened with this? And it's a big red flag. And also with Littlefinger getting out just in time, which we talked about last week, because he knows how dangerous King's Landing is getting. And had Littlefinger been there, they would have torn him to shreds as well. They would have gone for him probably first, because he's the one who put the tax on all the refugees and stuff. So clearly Littlefinger is much more wily as to what Varys is doing than, you know, Tyrion and the Lannisters are. But it is a short chapter. I mean, you feel sorry for Lawless getting raped by 50 guys.
Yeah.
How she survived that, I don't know. But that's all I have for Tyrion 9. Do you have anything else?
Yeah, no, not really, no.
God, we're going through them really quick today.
I know.
They were kind of short, though.
Having said that, this chapter I've got quite a bit to say.
No. I actually have some written down here. Well, I'll so we have Stannis. Well, we have Davos 2, and we're with Stannis, and Davos is arriving back. We haven't seen Davos in a while. He's been out sending around Davos's message about Cersei and Jaime, and while he was out there, he also heard all the rumors about Stannis, about Selyse and Patchface and all that kind of thing. And I think Davos has come back to a very, very different position, a very different Stannis. A more fearful Stannis, but also a much more, if possible, more dogmatic, and yet still willing to listen to Davos, even after all of Mel's influence, even though she's now sharing a bed with him, and clearly influencing his dreams, his nightmares in some way.
Well, is she sharing a bed with him? She shares his.
Well, sorry, yeah, you're right. She sleeps with him. She's in the same chamber, isn't she?
Yes. Yeah.
Sorry, you're right. She might not be in the same bed.
Yeah, I mean, it's alluded to, isn't it?
Yeah.
And he seems to be just like completely drained, like his life force is being drained out of him. She casts another shadow baby in this chapter. So Renly was the first. This Penrose is the second, and Stannis refers in this chapter to a man being able to cast 12 shadows. So this is the second one. So I'm guessing if she drained him of like being able to use his life force to cast another 10 shadows, that would be the end of Stannis. He would have been dead by the end of that process. So you can see how much it takes out of you to be able to do that. You can only do it 12 times. And this is the second time, and already he's looking a bit ropey.
Yeah.
So I've got a few things here. This was quite a long chapter for me. So we've got two parts of it are the shadow baby at the end and arriving into Storm's End, but also the confrontation with Penrose and the siege at Storm's End. So just a few observations that I've made about Davos feeling uncomfortable in his knight's mail. And that quote at the beginning of the chapter, it's not for me to question the king's command, and yet. So that could mean a million different things. So it set my right at the beginning of this chapter. It's that quote just set my head racing. It's not for me to question the king's command, and yet. And this is something that links to an old MP theory that he never really quite articulated, and I'm sure I'm not going to do a much better job of it. But there does seem to be a lot of parallels here between this particular siege at Storm's End and Stannis's siege at Storm's End at the beginning of the rebellion. Penrose is a dude, by the way. I just have to point that out. Stannis could do with a man like him on his team rather than that bitch Mel. But it's interesting that a lot of the details here that I've forgotten, Penrose does seem happy to give up Storm's End to anyone, but he draws the line when it comes to Edric Storm. So why is Edric Storm so important? He's just a boy. He's a bastard boy. So in fact, let's just think about some big questions here. Why does Stannis go to? Why is Stannis even bothered about Storm's End at this point?
This is my big question.
Yeah.
Why does he? I mean, Davos says in this chapter, you need to go to King's Landing, like now.
It would be the perfect time. Tywin's distracted. Yeah, Tywin's worrying about how to defeat the wolf boy. This would be the perfect time just to swoop in. Renly's not around anymore. You know, you can mobilize the troops as you get. This is perfect timing. Now, it could be that Stannis is thinking to himself, yeah, we'll get to that really quickly because I know I'll be able to get hold of Storm's End very quickly. It won't be that same siege of, you know, a year and a half or whatever it was.
But it's not that. It's that Mel has... Like, how much is Stannis in denial of his part in Renly's murder? And how aware is he of his guilt or of his role? That's what I'm in this chapter. You're not entirely sure.
I think he knows that Mel's doing this. I think he knows it's Mel's work and how powerful she is. But he's very quick to kind of give himself an alibi of like, this was nothing to do with me. I was, you know, you can check. I was in my room when this happened. I couldn't possibly have been there. I mean, we're left in no doubt at the end that Davos realizes that the shadows that are being cast by Mel are the shadows of Stannis Baratheon.
Yeah, and it's one of those things though. Is that the reason why he's just like, well, I can just go and why risk losing Storm's End again? I'll just get it now. I can do it quick, you know, Bob's your uncle, Fanny's your aunt, Shadow Baby, get in there, get in out, and then go to King's Landing. It seems like a waste of time.
I honestly think that we cannot underestimate how important it is to Stannis, this concept of being the rightful heir.
Yeah.
I think that drives him as a moral, as a you know, force of everything, really. It drives him about, and I don't think this necessarily relates to him being the rightful heir. I think he can recognize where other people are the rightful heir. It just so happens to be that he is the rightful heir in this situation, and he sees that, so he sees it as that's important. I think if somebody else legitimately came up as a no, actually, I have more legitimacy over you, and this is the reason why, he would probably step down and say, well, yeah, because the main thing is the rightful heir has to be. So if you're proving that you are more of a rightful heir than I am, then fine. But he's the rightful heir of Storm's End, so immediately that's where he's going to feel that he needs to go. What the importance of Edric Storm is at this point, I don't know, unless off-page Stannis already knows what Mel's plans are for the whole King's blood is important and all this kind of, you know, maybe we don't know. Maybe that's like, what they talk about when she's in his room all night. Who knows?
It's one of those things though that yes, being the rightful heir is important to him, and I agree with you. I think if it was proved that was someone else, then he'd step aside. However, like everybody else in this story, power goes through his head, and that's why he has Mel there, because being right isn't enough to secure your place, and he doesn't trust himself or anybody else to get there rightfully. He feels like he needs Mel, and he needs to use a very dodgy and it's not only that, he knows that it's breeding discontent even among the men that are with him. Like, he knows that that nobody likes this. Like, everybody has a big problem with this religion, and he's still pushing forward with it.
But again, if everything comes back to whoever the rightful heir is, that's the main driving force behind Stannis, then he will do whatever it takes to take that, to become the rightful heir, including some really dodgy tactics and magic. And, you know, it's like, okay, I'm going to use what I need to my advantage because I am the rightful heir. If you think about that same concept, that the only thing that's important to Stannis is who the rightful heir is. In this chapter, we have this interaction between Stannis and Davos, where clearly Stannis values Davos's opinion. And Davos is kind of right to point out that Stannis is being a bit hypocritical about whose life to spare and who's being loyal, and Stannis kind of agrees with this. And during this conversation, Davos grabs his finger pouch, and they have a conversation about what happened there, and that it was, you know, Davos says, well, you had to do it, I understand, because it was justice. And Stannis says it was justice. So bear in mind, I just want you to put into your head that the only thing that's important is who is the rightful heir. So Stannis here is saying it was justice. A good act does not wash out the bad. You were a hero and a smuggler. So here are my questions about this and observations. Maybe Davos didn't lose his fingers for smuggling. Maybe he lost his fingers for something else, for being some sort of hero. Stannis points out in this chapter, in this scenario, in this Storm's End siege, that the lords have turned their back on the rightful king for a usurper, i.e. Renly. The lords have turned their back on their rightful king for a usurper, which is the worst possible thing you could do if all you're concerned about is who is the rightful heir. These exact same words could relate to Aerys and Robert. Those lords turned their back on the rightful king, and Robert was the usurper. In this case, Renly's the usurper. So, and he's talking about things being forgiven but not forgotten, like in terms of the lords. So, which he's kind of alluded to around Ned before. So what he's saying here is, look, I've got all these lords here that were Renly's. They turned their back on their rightful king, i.e. me, for a usurper, Renly. Maybe what happened in the Siege of Storm's End, original, like 0.1, is, can we be with that mindset, can we be absolutely certain that Stannis did go with his brother as a usurper rather than actually the rightful king? As nasty and as horrible and as shitty as Aerys was Stannis loyal to his rightful king rather than his brother? But we don't know. We don't know how far he would have gone with that, because Aerys was murdered by the Kingslayer.
Robert wouldn't have killed his own brother, no matter what he'd done.
No, I don't think he would have done.
So perhaps your theory is that he wasn't holding up Storm's End for Robert.
Stannis. For Robert, it was for Aerys. Yeah.
That would make sense as to why Robert doesn't give Storm's End to him. It's a punishment. Now, why he doesn't make him hand.
Leading on from that, which is the MP bit, is, well, why would he do that? Why would he? Is there something additional to Stannis holding Storm's End for Aerys, and then in At the end of this chapter, you get Davos talking about the smuggle, the original smuggle into Storm's End in the original siege, and he says that he brought life shaped to look like onions, and I've just put "what the fuck" in my notes.
Yes, that stuck out to me as well.
Yeah.
I had that written down.
The fuck? Life shaped to look like onions. Come on. And in this chapter, again, Storm's End, the Redux, you've got the same thing happening, the smuggle taking place, where life is being shipped into Storm's End to look like something. You know, there's a discussion. She's in. You know, they're both. You know, they're smuggling themselves in there in disguise as something else, and he's bringing life. You know, you could call it that, whatever. This weird shadow baby, magical demon thing that she gives birth to. So maybe, and this is the MP bit, maybe Stannis was standing for his rightful king, which is an important concept to Stannis, brother or no brother, and we know how much sibling rivalry and infighting there was between the Baratheon boys after their parents died. Maybe Stannis did hold true to his rightful king because, like it or not, he was the rightful king. And maybe Davos smuggled life into Storm's End. And maybe that's why Daenerys is called Stormborn, because she was born at Storm's End, not at Dragonstone. There's a whole lot of tinfoilery there.
I don't think so. I don't even think.
But I do feel really strongly about this concept that everything about Stannis is about who the rightful heir is, whether that's him, whether that's whoever. It's an important thing.
Even if you take Stannis out of it, because we can't see into his mind, we'll never see his thoughts. Look at who we do see it through. We see it through Davos. The level of loyalty he shows to Stannis, like, is, I think, there's no clear foundation for that loyalty.
There's a secret. There's a secret there between the two of them.
Yeah. Like, you can understand someone having that level of loyalty for a king or a queen or a prince and a princess, as might have been the case with Viserys and Dany, or, you know, Rhaenys. But I can never quite square Davos's loyalty to Stannis. It's never fully, and I mean, I guess it's one of the reasons why we have so few Davos chapters. So we just have to try and take it as given. Oh yeah, he's really loyal to Stannis. He's really down with Stannis. Like, but why? Like, why? What does Stannis ever do for him apart from knight him? And even then, we find out in this chapter, Mel tells Davos that she's actually a knight of sorts, that she considers herself a knight, which suggests to me that the Red Priests and Priestesses can just choose whatever lord or whatever person they want to be loyal to, like a knight can. It has nothing got to do with their faith or an allegiance to a central kind of a central religious body. It's more to do with the person. So if Stannis will take on anybody as a knight, then what does that doesn't make you special, Davos. Like, look who he's willing to. She considers herself a knight in Stannis's army, and she's giving birth to shadow babies. And and he even says, "I've never been in the presence of evil until this night." And it's like, there's something not right, but it would make sense if it's not about his loyalty to Stannis, it's about his loyalty to the Targaryens. And it would be interesting to see if Davos ends up serving Dany or something in some way.
It's just what else? Let me see what notes I've got here. It's the peach. Stannis reflects that he did love Renly, so he eventually kind of after the fact he reflects that he did love Renly,
but not
and
Robert.
Yes, and he wonders if the peach had a deeper meaning. So to me, the peach is the entirety of this Song of Ice and Fire story. Has it got deeper meaning? So that's, to me, is a metaphor for the whole experience. I thought it was funny that Stannis drinks salt water. It's like, oh my god, he's so dour that he even drinks salt water.
He's like a, what do you call it? Is a flagellation. It's like he's whipping like constantly, like God. I bet he sleeps on a bed of nails as well.
Yeah, Stannis feels that he needs to take Storm's End to continue that sense of fear, to bind his men to him. Davos thinks they should take King's Landing while Tywin is distracted. There is a bit of like, what are you doing? What are you doing? But in a way, I can see, I suppose you've got to get into the mindset of Stannis and his insecurities and his background with his brothers and his upbringing, and what he feels gives him his sense of, morality or whatever, because I think he is a good man. I think he just it's the way he conducts himself isn't always necessarily the right way of going around things, but I think he errs more on the side of good than evil. I think he just uses whatever he can to progress his whatever he's motivated to do.
So do you think he would, having taken King's Landing, do you think he would then offer the throne to Dany, or do you think he would have kept the throne for himself? I mean, he said in the last, when he was talking to Renly, that he would make Renly his heir. But I mean, that's a bit of a kind of a
if he had no promise. Maybe. But again, it could just be, I'm the rightful heir. If I don't have any sons, then you would be the rightful heir. Go, that would be and it's like, okay, I can kind of see where Stannis comes from with that. I do think, again, he's very, just think about his, Stannis the grammar Nazi and things like that. Everything's got to be dot the I's and cross the T's with Stannis. It's got to be the right way of doing things. And I think that he knows that one way of claiming the throne is by force in battle, by winning the throne. That's a legitimate way of Robert being the king. So no, I don't think he would recognize Daenerys, because I think he would still see himself as the rightful heir. It's all about who the rightful heir is and how he justifies that to himself. And I think at one point for Stannis, the rightful heir wasn't his brother, it was Aerys. It's just that nobody knows that. Nobody knows that except maybe Davos.
I definitely don't think he loves or ever loved Robert.
No.
No. I think that's a particularly important point, and not that Stannis ever, Stannis doesn't seem to show love to anybody, but I think it is important when he does say that he loved Renly. It's kind of interesting though with the shadow babies that it's like the Horcruxes in Harry Potter. It is weakening him, and potentially intellectually as well. That he's not able to see, the most rational steps forward. How many times does she do this, do you think, that we know of? Well, we know 2 for sure, right? But are there any other times you think that she's attempted this?
Who is the... there's a... where she thinks about Renly being at the... and it's like, well, there can't be 2 outcomes. And we know that it wasn't Renly, it was actually the Knight of Flowers in all dressed up in green and what have you. I don't know. I'm just trying to think of.
So the reason I ask is Sunny asked a question, another question, final question. Mel said that she didn't kill Renly. Why would she lie? I think she's genuine. She didn't kill Renly. Stannis did. I think that's why she's not lying.
Yeah,
it's Stannis. It's not her. Can somebody like Taurus of Myr, who also has great power as a Red Priest, could he do this as well? Not necessarily give birth to shadow baby, but seed a shadow baby in a woman. Is that possible?
No, I think they all have slightly different
powers,
specialisms, don't they? And he seems to have this resurrection. Whether he knows how, it's just he just seems to have this skill power, even though he doesn't really even understand how he's wielding it. And the same with Mel, but she just seems to have what she thinks is more of a skill of reading the flames.
Yeah.
And producing these shadow babies, but she's not able to do. I mean, there's all this. It is very Harry Potter with, it needs to be within the walls, and there are spells woven into the walls that protect them against magic. There's a lot of this. We know that it's the same with the wall, and now we're told that the walls of various different castles have got spells woven in them to ward away different types of magic.
Yeah.
So that's interesting just in itself.
Yeah, it's interesting as well, because I guess Stannis knows that a siege at Storm's End potentially, like, he knows that they could last it, so anyone can last it. That there is no way in or out. So this is his only option. He's just obsessed with it, though.
I mean, there's this thing about there's no grey areas with Mel. You're either good or you're evil. It's either light or dark. There is no in between, which just makes me think what's happened here is you think you've chosen the side of good when actually it's the side of evil, but you don't know because, you're so steadfast in it has to be one or the other. It's either good or evil. Which one are you?
Well, it's one man's dystopia is another man's utopia.
Yes.
It's like we are very much on the side of the Starks because we get their voice mainly. But when George flips that script and starts getting us into the head of Cersei and Jaime, and suddenly we are in the head of all Lannisters, it's like they're only human as well,
And you hear about how harsh and horrific the Kings of Winter were, and the old, we get some of the really old flashbacks through Bran later on in Feast, and it's like, these like crazy old she-wolves that are swinging scythes here, left, right, and centre. So it's like, whoa, I think we're being hoodwinked here into like this whole.
I think.
Yeah.
Like, we think blood magic, well, we don't really think of blood magic in this with the same negative connotations as we think of fire magic, because fire instinctively, like, we're supposed to be afraid of fire. But if you think about the mythology of fire, like that Prometheus gives fire to human beings, and that's like intelligence. Like, there's danger, but there's a lot of good in that as well. So
but like passion and drive and
cigarettes. Candles. Birthday candles.
But it's this is an interesting one. It's I think that there are lots of, I think there's all sorts of stuff going on in the original Siege at Storm's End, and we've pieced together the bits that we've heard and formed what we think actually happened. Whereas if you listen to the dialogue and the interactions between Davos and Stannis, there's some secret going on between them that is not yet revealed, and I think it's to do with what he brought into Storm's End and this life shaped to look like onions. What the hell?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yes, you could say, well, what it's a very, you know, it's a way of saying that you know, the onions represented, you know, they were food, so they brought, that was life being brought into, but that's not how it's written.
No,
Life to look like onions. That can be nothing more than something was brought in disguise.
So why did he take his fingers then?
Well, he also says that you were a hero and a smuggler. So I think
there's something else there. I think Davos may have tried to steal something. May have tried to maybe take something that wasn't his, from Rhaenys, maybe some jewels or something. There might be something else there.
It could be you've taken, you know, I maybe you did go with Ares, but you felt so bad and guilty about doing that and letting Robert the usurper, his brother, down, that he took it out on Davos. You know, I'm doubtful, but I don't think it was because it was for smuggling. I think it was some weird stuff has gone on between Stannis and Davos that we don't know about. That means that Stannis is super loyal to Davos, is super loyal to Stannis, and we're not quite sure of the basis of that, because I don't think elevating him to a lord and his sons. Well, yeah, I mean, it's providing him with a good future, but there's something more there. There's something more there about their relationship.
Why did he go in the first place? Like, there's no, like, why did he just decide to smuggle in onions? Like, what had he got to gain out of that? There's
nothing. He was sent
it's
in
not
there.
explained at all.
He was sent in there with, I think as well, there's a something where Daenerys remembers, or somebody remembers, a little ship with black sails, which is Davos's ship.
Oh, really?
I'm sure there's something where Daenerys remembers some. I mean, she can't. I mean, it probably would have been Rhaenys pregnant rather than a baby being wrapped up. But who knows? I don't know. She wouldn't have remembered that as a baby anyway. But oh yeah, there's just something more there to it, I think, and definitely. I'm not entirely convinced. This was like if you transpose the language and the feeling and the sentiment that Stannis had about the lords and turning their backs on their rightful king for a usurper, and how he relates it to the situation that's going on now, there's something there. There's something there, definitely. He's talking about it being justice, and a good act doesn't wash out the bad. It's more than just smuggling some onions in.
Yeah, no, I like it. Yeah. So, so is that it then for Davos?
Yes, yeah. Just to kind of stick a pin in that, and I'm sure we'll come back to that. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, we are into the extremely short.
Yes.
Jon 5. Qhorin Halfhand arrives with 100 brothers.
Yeah.
They've been out doing little reconnaissance missions, I guess, and they've found a war horn, isn't that right? And it's broken, and Jon ends up giving it to Sam. And Qhorin says that he knew Ed and Ned and Rickard, so he knew Jon's father and grandfather. And Qhorin tells Mormont that Mance is gathering forces, that they're planning to dig under the wall, and but before they do, Mance is searching for some artifact, some magical artifact, we assume, that's going to do something, that's going to help them in the fight to come. And he chooses Jon to come with him with a small, contingent that they're going to go and try and figure out what's going on with this artifact and Mance and all that kind of thing. And the reason he chooses him is because the Starks, the old gods, are the gods of the First Men, which is the Starks. And that's the only thing I want to talk to you about is the god stuff. But yeah, so what did you get from
well
this?
Again, it's like Corin seems like a bit of a dude again, a bit like Penrose. It was feared by the wildlings, you know, the way he sort of sits there cross-legged and he's got his ponytail and everything. He seems like a bit of a hippie, but I kind of, you know, he's a bit of a force to be. He's a bit of a force to be reckoned with, clearly. Just before we get to that, though, there's this thing about Jon overhearing mutinous talk from Chet and Sisterman and about Mormont, and he hears it, acknowledges it, puts it in the back of his mind as what he calls empty talk, and then just leaves it. And it's like, is that ever recognised in Jon again as being something that he feels guilty about? Because there's a bit of him where he's like, should I go and tell Mormont that the men might be planning to like mutiny, or should I just leave it? And he's like, oh, I'll just leave it.
I don't remember it coming up again.
Oh yeah, that just makes me think that was a huge failing for me with Jon. Also, I'm wondering whether Jon actually blew the horn, because he says he gave it to Sam, it was cracked, and he realized it was broken because he did try to get a sound from it, but it didn't have any effect. So he did blow that horn.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering, did that do anything? Did that have any effect that we don't know about?
Perhaps.
Unless it's like a particular person that needs to blow that horn. I don't know.
Well,
I mean, it's significant, isn't it? Do you think? It's. I mean, it wouldn't be there. Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. Definitely. Does Sam still have that?
Yes.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
I think so. Yeah. He carries it, and it's funny because Jon kind of observes, oh, Sam was one of these people that he just likes old artifacts and ancient, that even if it's broken, he's just one of those people that kind of collects old things. And you can see Sam being like that as the bookish type of.
He thinks about it I guess because of the old documents that Sam, like the what you call it, the accounts that he found or whatever.
Yeah, all the old scrolls and everything. But I think that's why Sam still has it, because Jon's absolutely right. He is one of those geeky, oh, that's like ancient, I don't know what it is, but I'll just keep hold of it. But yeah, it just made me think, oh, well, okay, I didn't realize that Jon basically admits that he blew the horn, but he couldn't get a sound from it. So I wonder if that meant anything, or does it have to be blown by a particular person or whatever, and Jon didn't have any effect? Is that horn meant to be for somebody in particular? Corin, I read that as Corin thinks that Mance's army planned to break the wall with sorcery, so breaking it rather than going under it or over it, just like basically breaking a part of the wall and just going through it, because they say, don't they, it would take them ages to dig under it or try and climb it. We even if they have a massive army of thousands up from the Frostfangs and all these different clans that he's mobilized together, there's a huge army that he's got, it would still take them forever to get over this 700. It's a big defense. But if he's found something that can just go poof and break the wall and they go through it, then we're in the shit. So
in the Middle Ages, that was a big thing, to like break a siege.
Yes.
Or to get into a castle in particular, you would dig underground. You'd dig under the castles, and that's where the word undermine comes from. It's literally undermine the castle. So it wouldn't be out of the ordinary at all to do that, like to dig underground. But as you said,
it would take ages.
It would take ages, and it's not. it's not really possible if the ground is frozen.
It wouldn't
work.
It would take them years. It'd take them years.
Yeah.
Because it's what, like a mile thick or something ridiculous like that. It's huge.
Yeah.
So Corin somehow chose Jon, recognized something in him, maybe something that he already always knew. You know, there seemed to be, it was like he handpicked Jon, though I don't think it was definitely deliberate.
He's also a bit critical of Mormont's plans, Corin. So it's not as if
I don't blame him. Like moments, like come on, mate, get a grip.
And maybe that's why Jon doesn't feel that guilty about the mutiny, because he isn't very good. He is like, why are they all sitting out there?
Yeah.
Is it just to get Jon to Corin? Is that the only? It's just a safe handover of Jon. Is the only reason. So yeah.
So that was it. That's all I got, apart from the Raven saying "die" 5 times.
Yeah. So I guess the thing that I want to talk to you about is that the gods of the First Men and the gods of the Starks. Why does that matter? That they have to Jon's ancestry, that his ancestors worshipped the old gods. Is that the Whites? Is that White Walkers? Is that like the Night King? Is that, what is that all about? Like, why?
Well, what I've got from what I've picked up is the old gods and the gods of the First Men, i.e. the gods of the Starks, are not the same as the gods of the Children of the Forest. There's something different, and there's something that's more powerful beyond the wall. Remember last time we talked about this, what seems like an exodus of First Men. They arrived right down at the bottom of the south, but managed to end up in the north. That's where predominantly, the First Men and the old religion was based, like in the north. Maybe Corin's just seeing this as a straightforward war between magic and it's the old gods, i.e. the Stark First Men gods versus ice magic or the others magic, which is maybe the same as the Children of the Forest. I don't know. I don't quite know what that is, but I just question who Corin is and why he would have handpicked Jon.
And he's very concerned about the fact that Mance has recruited wargs.
Yeah. So, again, wargs are seen as evil creatures.
So do the Starks, is that a way of getting a warg on your side? Perhaps.
Yeah.
And very interested in the direwolf.
Yes.
Make sure to bring that direwolf with you.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
So it's just something with that.
Yeah.
It kind of strikes me that Corin perhaps has gotten some information that he needs a Stark, or has heard that there's a strong Stark out there, and that it's probably not Jon that he needs, it's Bran. That's who he probably needs. But interesting guy, Corin, and not feeling a bit sorry for Mormont.
No.
Kind of getting this. He's bringing all of this on himself, to be honest.
Yeah.
So that's it for Jon 5. Again, Jon's story, a lot happens in this chapter and a lot doesn't happen at the same time. It's very it's just kind of a nice kind of little trot.
Yeah.
It's not galloping along at all. Unlike Tyrion, Tyrion's story is just flying forward. So much happening in every chapter. And again,
he's all around King's Landing as well, isn't he? He's either in the Red Keep, he's at Chataya's, he's at Shays, he's in the Small Council, he's in, he seems to have Varys in every bloody chapter.
And time is moving pretty quickly as well. So
Yeah.
And this is a particularly difficult chapter to read. This is a particularly difficult place to defend Tyrion. I found anyway. So yeah, he discovers at the beginning of this chapter through Lancel, and actually I just wanted to ask, just in relation to Lancel, I wanted to ask you something, but he finds out through Lancel that Cersei is planning to take Tommen out of King's Landing and hide him. And he actually thinks that's a good idea. Tyrion thinks that's a good idea. And the reason Lancel, he's not doing this for any threat. He's doing it for a promise that Tyrion has made him to give him his own kind of command in the battle. So it strikes me, I don't know what you think this, that Lancel is definitely someone that's in it for the glory. That may, in the end, where he is now potentially in the series, that may be the one thing that trips him up, or the one thing that can be exploited, or whatever. He's a real lust for glory and heroship. So I just wonder where that's going to lead him.
Yeah, I hadn't really spotted that, but it's true. I kind of feel sorry for Lancel, but he's just, oh God, he's just an open book, isn't he, for manipulation and by everybody, by absolutely everybody he encounters.
It seems like he wants to be Jaime.
Yeah, I kind of wish Kevin was a better father, because he seems to have more of a chance of being a better father than Tywin is to his children.
Yeah.
But he doesn't quite make it. They're both a bit rubbish, really, as fathers. Yeah.
Yes.
I didn't.
So,
I think you're right, though. I think he is wanting.
There's something not quite right about his personality. Tyrion doesn't trust Bran and you were talking about Bran like overstepping the mark. He doesn't trust Bran to go and get Tommen himself. And Bran says, "Oh, why don't you send me? I'll take it. I'll take the lordship." And Tyrion doesn't trust Bran, and I'm just like, why are you keeping this guy around? Like, he's a bigger purse away from just stabbing you literally in the back. So I still don't get why he keeps Bran around.
I think it's because Tyrion's just used to having people around him that if anyone is a yes man around Tyrion, it's for a reason, and it's not because they like him. Because how, in his mind, how could they? Because of who he is and what he looks like, and you know, how could anyone? He's constantly questioning that in bed with Shay, or the bed games, or whatever it is he calls them, bedroom games. And it's the same with Bron as well. It's kind of like he wants to like him, he wants to be his friend, but really he doesn't trust him. And he's, you know, there are points where it's like, you know, you're getting a bit too big for your boots there, mate. You know, remember who's paying you the money. And I think at this stage, the only thing that really kind of fires Tyrion up in terms of love and who he really loves is his family, weirdly, in a fucked up way. I think, you know, even with Tommen, I think he's only really that concerned about Tommen because Tommen is Jaime's child.
And they're the closest he'll get to children.
Yeah.
I think that's the big thing for Tyrion. Tyrion doesn't hold any ambitions to be king. He loves being Hand. So he could potentially be Hand for the rest of his life. Once he looks after those children.
It's a good position for him, definitely.
The whole thing with Shay makes me really uncomfortable. And it makes me wonder, is this the moment she decides she doesn't give a shit about him? Because he decides that he's going to get her into the Red Keep by putting her in the kitchens, and she doesn't want to go to the kitchens because her father made her his whore, and made her work in the kitchens, and Tyrion keeps pushing it. And, you know, he says to Varys later that I prefer her fondled by the baker's men or whatever it is, and rather than being stabbed by Stannis's men. And it's just like, that's not.
Yeah.
Why do you get to? She isn't your property. But in his head, she is, because she's a whore. And I don't think he, regardless of how he loves her, I feel like he's way more. He just objectifies her constantly. It's not love what he feels for her, and he thinks a lot about Tysha. He tells her the whole Tysha story, which is, I still have loads of questions about that. Of course, everybody does, and he will later on, obviously, when he talks to Jaime about it. But yeah, he tells Shay that the man he wishes sometimes that he could kill Cersei, but that the man who kills his own blood is cursed forever. And of course he has.
See, I read that, and I read that whole scenario backwards and forwards between them. I read that differently, even though I don't think Tyrion was being particularly nice, really, in this situation and the way that he thinks of Shay. I do think that I've got here, Shay wants to be a lady, not a pot girl, and she tries lots of different tactics, everything. She appeals to lots of different things in him, like, my hands won't be soft, and I won't be this, and I won't be the things that you want me to be. She's desperate to get into King's Landing, but she wants it to be where, you know, where she's treated favorably. And she's desperately trying all kinds of things, and you know, oh, am I displeasing you? Am I displeasing you? And I think he feels that he's losing her. So that's when he tells that. That's when because he even thinks about it. Like, why did I tell her that? Why did I tell her about Tysha? And he tells her about Tysha because he feels that he's losing her, because she doesn't want to be anything apart from, you know, she doesn't want to be in the kitchens. I mean, luckily Varys comes up with a solution for this later on down the line, but I think there's quite a lot of dynamics really in that exchange where I wouldn't necessarily say that it's always Tyrion that's got the upper hand.
Oh no, definitely not. No, definitely not. And I do think she's manipulating him into marrying her, so that I think this is all orchestrated by Tywin. I think that's what Tywin wants. He wants an excuse to say to Tyrion, you married a whore before, now you're marrying another one, like, this is blah blah, and like, so that he can hold that over Tyrion again, and psychologically cripple him again, you know. So no, I definitely but I just think that I think, you know, there's no whole, like, there may have been a chance perhaps for Shay, that had he married her, that maybe she wouldn't have, I don't know, maybe she wouldn't have turned on him, perhaps. I don't know. Maybe she wouldn't have gone with Tywin's plan, but that's, you know, we'll never know. But it's just the fact that he's just so insistent on pushing her, and underestimates her ability to look after herself, even if the city is taken over. I mean, they're not going to kill everybody.
Yeah, I mean, he's also fueled by extreme jealousy of the fact that she's got, you know, she's got sort of men friends coming round to visit her, and it's like Simon Silvertongue. So, you know, that makes him feel extremely uncomfortable straight away.
And he's also taken aback by the fact that she recognizes Varys straight away. She must be one of the few people that can recognize him.
Yeah. And again, maybe that's because it's Varys who put her there, not Tywin, who, you know, I don't know.
That's true, yeah. And it seems that Varys has been hanging out for a while.
Yes. Like you say, dressed up in, you know, as if he's been in the crowds.
It's a big question because we assume we assume Varys is working for himself or for Illyrio or for the people or whatever. But if he is responsible for the riot and then for the subsequent disappearance of Tyrek Lannister, who was with Robert when he died, that's a massive thing, because that means that Varys is trying to hide the truth of Robert's death, or he was some way involved in it. That he was way more involved with Cersei, perhaps, or maybe he was the one who potentially killed Robert. That wasn't Cersei, like everybody thinks, that like Cersei thinks. But I don't know. There's just there's something like the way Tyrion describes his smell. That isn't something like you can bottle. Like that's something that he's been living in for a long time.
Yeah.
And what Varys, like, do you believe Varys's story?
I've just got why did what do I believe his story?
Because I'm not sure.
No, I'm not sure either.
It's a little, I don't know, something about the way there's no motive in what the sorcerer does, which I think is, you know, he deliberately leaves it out. He focuses on the noise coming from the fire. I don't know, there's something not right with the story, the way he recalls it. Like he was, I don't know.
And it's the fact, I mean, the fact that if you're going to do that to somebody, you just think like, why did that happen? Why would that have happened? And I don't think it's just to humiliate him or to make him feel, to cause misery for the rest of his life. I think you would do that, especially these words, root and branch. Not root and branch, what did he say? Root and stem. But it does seem to me that kind of like it is almost root and branch for like a family. You're just destroying a family line by doing that.
Yeah, why take him in particular?
Yeah. So again, here, this is where the beginnings of like Varys is a Blackfire, or Varys is a secret Targaryen, or this like
there is form for that in the like with egg and stuff, Duncan egg. There's form there for Targaryen who has the ability to disguise themselves. But
it took his manhood to sacrifice it.
Yeah.
To me, that could only be, well, I don't know. I don't know why. I don't know what the magic was. I don't know why. I don't know what the motivation was. It just seemed like a very peculiar story.
And we never come across that kind of ritual.
No. The only rationale that I can think is that we found the last surviving member of this house or this family line, and we need to make sure that then he was a boy. So we need to make sure that they never, ever, ever have the ability to reproduce. I mean, there's all sorts of wild theories out there about Varys not even being LaDonna and James thinking that Varys is actually a woman.
Yeah, I don't really buy that one.
No, I don't buy that one. No.
I also don't understand, because when he gets kicked out and Varys says, "What do you expect me to do now?" and the guy says, "You should just go away and die." Like, why not just kill him?
Yeah, exactly. Well, that was, you just said that as a reason for and I'm here to prove everybody wrong. It's like
even if he wants to stop that particular family line, why not kill him? Like, there's more to the ritual. There's more to the motive for doing that Varys is hiding.
Yeah.
There's more to the, like, why keep him alive after that so you can tell people that he's now a eunuch? And also, Varys alludes to the fact that he had to use other parts of his body to survive, which is prostitution, potentially, probably. But yeah, it's all, I don't know, there's something not quite right about the story, and nobody should ever believe anything. Like Tyrion, because Varys focuses on the magical aspects, Tyrion doesn't trust the magical aspects of it. But it just kind of distracts from, it's like the fire mage. It distracts you from him really stealing the truth in that situation.
Yeah.
So yeah,
the other thing to note is he's under, just generally inside Tyrion's head, you get the notion that he's under quite a bit of extreme stress here, and he's talking about going to the Meister to get something to help him, like settle his nerves and what have you. But he won't go to Pycelle because and then there's this like, in his own head, he talks about mistrusting the Meisters, and it's kind of like, boom, there's the conspiracy around Meisters is born from Tyrion's mistrust of Meisters right here at the beginning. There's this issue here about about the Tower of the Hand and its secret tunnels, and like, so why was Chataya's ever used in the first place if there could have been a more direct route into the Tower of the Hand? And also, again, which hand was it who had these little secret tunnels backwards and forwards built?
Yeah, because he thinks it's Maegor, but isn't it? But because that's why Maegor had everybody killed that built the Red Keep. But why would Maegor build tunnels to the hand?
No, it was it was a previous hand, I think, who had that.
It was a previous hand. I think it was. I still think it was
Tywin. Yeah.
That's my money.
Me too.
Or Jon Arryn.
Yeah,
I think Tywin.
I think it's more recent than we think.
Yeah, definitely. So
that's it.
That's it, really. Yeah, it's very kind of short, nice little run this week. Next week we're reading from Cat 6 to Theon 9.
Okay.
So I think it's the same kind of chunk, but I think we have a few more chapters if I remember correctly. But yeah, so are we on to Theon 9 already? Is that right?
It feels like we've only had about 3 Theon chapters.
Can't be right. I must have done something wrong there. That can't be right. Wait now.
What have I got there? Well, I've got the schedule that you sent me. Theon 4.
Yeah, no, that can't be right. That's a mistake.
Cat
Sorry,
6, Cat 6 to Theon 4, which is chapter 45 to chapter 50.
Let me just check that so that I can get that right. Why did I put in 9? It must be 5.
Yeah, because I think there's only about 4 or 5.
Yeah, there wouldn't be that many.
Of Theon. Well, we've got all the stuff going on at Winterfell, so so it's six chapters next week.
It's definitely to. I'll get it right here now. Just a bit slower. It must be Theon 5 because I don't think.
I've got, you sent me the schedule, the reread schedule.
I know, it must be a mistake in my schedule. How did I make that mistake? Okay.
But I've got it as 4, which sounds right to me.
Aha, it's 4 in the schedule.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know what I wrote. I don't know why I wrote down 9 then. I'm going mad.
Yeah. Week 8, 25th of February, Cat 6 to Theon 4. So 6 chapters, which is 45 to 50.
Yeah, cool. And
inclusive.
We only have a couple of weeks left, right? We don't have that much left.
Yeah, we've got we've got another 1, 2, 3, 4, another 4 weeks left.
4 weeks. All right, okay. That's
and
good.
then that's it. We usually, does that coincide with when you go away, Kat?
I'm not going away. I'll be away not until the end of April.
Okay. So I mean, we usually give ourselves a week off. So we'll give ourselves probably a week off in between books.
I might actually do that this week, make up a schedule for Storm.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, Claire,
Brilliant.
and thanks for watching, and thank you, Sunny and Raphael, for being here, and we will talk to you all next week for Clash of Kings. Oh, bye.